Welcome to the Coffee House, where in the next hour, higher education costs are mind-numbing. We'll go to school on making college more affordable. And join us for some tasty, fresh, healthy food at a local farmer's market. Then open a harp, not the beaver. This harp is a stylish, locally published alternative music magazine. Also, jazzman Antonio Parker and his Sounds of the City. Photojournalist Martin Luters takes us inside an Afghan refugee camp. Toby McLeod joins us to talk about In the Light of Reverence, his film chronicling a battle to defend holy sites here in the U.S., and we've got poetry by DJ Renegade and Rose Solari.
Hi, and welcome to the Forum at the Coffee House. A college degree in today's information economy is worth about what a high school diploma gained our parents or grandparents. A shot at success, but no guarantee. So, fellow parents, here's the dilemma. Our kids can't afford not to go to college, but can we afford to send them? Private university costs are through the roof. Tuition, mandatory fees, books, room and board, and basic living expenses. The annual cost of private colleges well exceeds the yearly income of most of us and threatens the retirement savings of all but the very rich. Public colleges are far less expensive, but far from cheap, and college, public or private, is only getting more costly. Average tuition up 5% a year, mandatory fees up 10% a year. So if your child is entering kindergarten in September, expect that college will cost twice what it does today. There's help out there in the form of scholarships and financial aid and in various college savings tax benefits like education IRAs and, more recently, so-called 529 plans. There are two basic types of 529 plans. Both offer attractive tax advantages. One or both might be right for you. First, there's the prepaid tuition plan. Maryland's Prepaid College Trust, for example, lets you lock in today's tuition and fees if your child...
Public college. The trust will pay full tuition and mandatory fees that are in effect at that college at the time that the child attends. So they know they've covered tuition and mandatory fees at any Maryland public college. Now, if the child decides to go to a private or out-of-state college, that's fine too, because in that case, the trust will pay that year's average tuition of the Maryland public colleges toward the tuition at the private or out-of-state college.
The state can afford to offer this deal because it expects to earn 7.5% or more interest on your prepaid tuition payments. The Prepaid College Trust also offers significant tax benefits.
First of all, for Maryland taxpayers, they could subtract their payments to the Maryland Prepaid College Trust from their Maryland state income that's used to calculate their Maryland income taxes up to $2,500 a year for each child they've enrolled in the program. So if they have 2 children in the trust, they could subtract up to $5,000 a year for the payments from their state income, 3 children, $7,500, and so forth. There are no income limits either to be able to take advantage of state income deductions.
To start saving for college, Virginia tax-free 529 plans, call us today or visit our website, virginia529.com.
Virginia also offers a similar prepaid tuition plan, but there the tax deduction is a bit less, $2,000 a year per kid. The federal tax advantages are the same for all 529 plans.
And when we do pay out tuition benefits when the child goes to college, the earnings that the family has realized are going to be tax-free in Maryland. And now, as of January of this year, the earnings are also tax-free at the federal level through at least the year 2010, which is another tremendous advantage as well.
Here's the rub. Maryland's prepaid college tuition plan, for example, only covers tuition and mandatory fees. It doesn't cover room and board, doesn't cover graduate school, and it doesn't begin to cover the cost of even undergraduate education if you go to a private college or an out-of-state school. That's where the college investment plan comes in. These are tax-free mutual fund investments. In Maryland, they're managed by T. Rowe Price and range from conservative to aggressive. Income from these funds can be used to cover most all higher education expenses, including room and board and graduate school. You get the same $2,500 tax deduction, and at least until 2010 and likely thereafter, earnings are tax-exempt at the state and federal level, just like the prepaid college trust plan.
The only difference is because you can put in up to a maximum account balance of $175,000 in the college investment plan, there's an 11-year limit on your ability to carry forward additional contributions for the tax deduction. And what that means is that you can contribute $27,500 to an account in the first year. Deduct $2,500 in the first year and in each of the next 10 years until you've deducted the whole thing. We had to have a limit on the college investment plan, otherwise families could set themselves up for literally decades of state income deductions.
Maryland's college investment plan lets you choose from an all-stock or all-bond portfolio or a 60-40 stock-to-bond mix. It's flexible. It can be tailored to your needs.
10 different investment options. 7 of those called enrollment-based portfolios because they're tied to a typical year when a child might be starting college. For example, there's Portfolio 2009, which would have an asset allocation that would be typically designed for a child that would be starting college around 2009. But the key with enrollment-based portfolios is that their asset allocation gradually changes to become a more conservative one over time. By the time 2009 comes around, there's a more conservative asset allocation than when you started out in the year 2002, for example. To be able to protect the principal, it's coming time to be able to pay out for college expenses, really don't be taking as much risk with your money.
One special advantage of the Virginia 529 plan assets there can't be reached by creditors. Even without that advantage in Maryland, certified financial planner Peg Downey is bullish on 529 plans.
I don't think there's anything better than you can do, provided you have some assurance that the investment choices available to you are solid. And the reason I say that is all these plans are really new, particularly have a track history, being as how every state in the union either now has or is developing a 529 plan. And since you're able to move them around from place to place on an annual basis, I'm not that concerned.
If the risk in the 529 investment plan relates to fund performance, in the prepaid tuition plan, there's the risk of jeopardizing financial aid eligibility.
The prepaid tuition plans are considered an asset of the student. When you're applying for financial aid, that counts against the student then as an asset, whereas the 529 plan, those are assets of the parent. And when a parent's assets are considered for use in terms of college education expenses, the parent is expected to contribute only 5.6% of assets. So the college savings plan are desirable in that respect because it's the parent's.
But what happens to 529 plan assets if your child never goes to college at all?
But both in Maryland and Virginia, basically 10 years after you would graduate from college, if you haven't used the money, you're supposed to take it out or change the beneficiary. The beneficiary doesn't even have to be a child. It can be another adult. If you were going to go back to graduate school, for instance, you could be the beneficiary.
If the assets are never used for education, they're treated as taxable income, the same as if you withdrew them from a retirement account. Speaking of which, Downey cautions that 529 plans aren't for everyone.
If people have really limited amounts of savings money available, first of all, I would fund their own retirement plan before I would fund college plans. People worry about that. They say, well, my kids are going to go to school before I go to college, but you can take the money out of your own retirement plans if you have to. And really, if you put the money in your retirement plan, it doesn't count against your financial purposes. So first of all, I'd make sure that I was able to fund my own retirement before I was funding college education for my children. Then, if a limited amount of money, probably up to $2,000 a year of savings, I'd be very interested in using the education IRA instead. It will count as an asset of the child at the time they go to college, but if we're staying at that limited level, we're probably also on a limited income level, so that we're probably eligible for financial aid.
Investment fund is a big hit. It was launched in December of last year, and by mid-May of this year, it had $100 million in investments. The prepaid tuition program doubled its enrollment last year and now stands at 14,000. Enrollment is already closed for the year in both Maryland and Virginia for a prepaid tuition plan unless your child is under 1 year of age. You can always open a college investment plan. Plans to introduce a college investment plan around September. However, it will not offer a prepaid tuition plan. I'm Mark Cohen, and this has been Coffee House.
Every Sunday morning, long before most Washingtonians are awake, the farmers are at work, setting up their stands at the Dupont Circle Farmers Market. By 9 a.m., the opening bell rings, the tables are full, and the farmers are ready for city shoppers. The Fresh Farm Market, located on Massachusetts Avenue and 20th Street in the district, opens in March and runs every Sunday morning, rain or shine, through December. Unlike some farmers markets, this is a producer-only market, which means that all products sold here are grown or produced by the farmers themselves. Now, in its 6th year, the Dupont Circle Farmers Market has become a popular gathering place on Sunday mornings.
Community. I think a lot of the people live in the area, but it's right near the subway. People come from Alexandria, Capitol Hill. Very, very accessible. Everybody's invited, even dogs. It depends on what's in season, but I buy, like today, I bought all kinds of greens, pea vines, arugula, stir fry, cheese, blue eggs, apples. I'm not finished. But I think it's wonderful, and I love buying from the farmer directly. Our goal when we started this was to put a face on food. You know, when you go to the supermarket and get your food, it comes in plastic, or you never meet a farmer. You never get to say, how did you grow this, or what should I do with this? And here you can not only taste it, but ask the farmer, you know, how are you growing this? You know, what can I do with this? And also see varieties that you don't see in the supermarket. I mean, it's clearly this abundance of the local product.
There are greens in the market I never heard of 5 years ago. And they're abundant now. People will buy them at all times. And they want them fresh. And they'll be in today, and if they don't sell them, they throw them away because you only get it that day. And you got to sell them. So people have developed taste, I guess, expanded their horizons.
The shoppers are very savvy. They know what they're looking for. They know what questions to ask. They come here for a reason. They ask us how the cows are raised, what we feed our cows, whether or not we use antibiotics or hormones, which we do not, whether they're grazed, which we do, and then they ask whether or not the cheese is vegetarian, which it is not. I use calf rennet. And they also ask if it's raw milk, which is important to a lot of people, and it is raw milk cheese.
Public education is a really important component of this farmers market. In fact, today we'll have a chef at market demonstration. We use local chefs to come and actually show how to prepare local seasonal food so that people don't have that fear of, you know, what do you do with this kale, or what do you do with 5 different varieties of squash. Lots of asparagus. We also want people to understand that this farmland is threatened that's close into our cities, and by helping support these farmers, they're helping to keep that farmland in production.
Socially, personally, and economically, it makes so much sense for farmers to be able to sell directly to the consumer. And you know, I would rather see something be fed to the chicken than have to sell it to a retail store, because you'll get half the price. It's like, why should you work the same amount for half the price? Farmers markets provide the other option, which is that you can sell high quality, very fresh produce and other value-added products for the top price to people who really will appreciate it, that you'll get to know personally, they'll get to know you personally and become loyal customers. So it's a better way.
This idea seems to be catching on. Farmers markets are increasing all over the country.
20 years ago, there were less than 100 farmers markets in this country, less than 100 farmers markets. And today, there will be, this year, 2002, over 3,000 farmers markets all across the country. USDA estimates that over 1 million people shop every week at a farmers market, which means they're shopping with their heads and their hearts and supporting local farmers in their communities all across the country, and that's a very important phenomenon.
Like that? Smell this one. This smells like a yellow pear. Isn't that nice? People really enjoy coming out on Sunday morning to spend the day at the market. It's like bringing the country here, everyone in the city to enjoy.
The Farmers Market at Dupont Circle, open every Sunday from 9 to 1 until December 22nd. For the Weekend Traveler, I'm Kimberly Keese.
Hi, and welcome to a second look at the Coffee House. Once upon a time, a gang of music-crazy writers led by Jan Wenner started a magazine in the music-crazy Bay Area of California. Very funky, folded up, printed on newsprint. They called it Rolling Stone. I suppose I could say we called it Rolling Stone because I joined the gang pretty early on. Okay, years have gone by. I've settled in Tacoma Park, which is definitely funky and sort of music-crazy, the folk festival, the jazz festival, and so on. Still, I have to admit, I was surprised to find out that right around the corner from me is my own Jan Wenner. His name is Scott Crawford, and he has launched a new alternative to Rolling Stone. Not funky, though. Very high gloss, very well written, and also, well, let Scott tell us all about it. He's here in the studio. Welcome, Scott. Welcome to the Coffee House. All right, it's not Rolling Stone yet. Actually, it's called
Harp.
Harp magazine. Where's that name come from?
I like the name for a couple different reasons. Harp is, of course, a slang for harmonica, so instant sort of musical connotation, and to harp on something means to sort of talk at length.
Harp on something. I like that.
I felt like the two kind of made sense.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, you know, it's Rolling Stone. It had nothing to do with the band. It was all the idea
right.
of Rolling Stone gathers no moss, which some people don't know. So, okay, a fairly original title, but not a very original idea, maybe. A magazine? I mean, a music magazine?
Right. Been done before.
Been done before?
Certainly.
So, why did you want to do it?
You know, people ask me that all the time, and I at this point, should have a better answer than I do.
You love music.
Yeah, I suppose it's just the magazine that I would want to read, and there's just nothing out there like this right now. And so I felt like, from talking to people and doing some research and feeling things out, that, there's just sort of a whole segment of the, population out there, music buying population, that isn't really being serviced with one particular magazine.
I'm 20 years older than you, without telling you my age, I know, but you can tell us your age. You're 31, right?
Right.
31. So you're talking to your generation in this magazine.
Right.
And you decided that your generation isn't being talked to by Rolling Stone, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think it's, not to,
Oh, that's okay.
Be critical of your previous employer, but yeah, I don't think Rolling Stone has sort of spoken to that generation in a while. And let's face it, it's because the Limp Bizkits and the bands like that are the ones that sell magazines. So, of course, Rolling Stone always finds room for the good stuff, but it's generally not found on the covers, and it's usually relegated to the review section or something.
All right. Okay. So. Well, who have you put on the covers?
Well, so far, we're on our fourth issue.
Fourth issue, right? So it's a short run, but impressive, I think.
Well, thanks. I think the first year is sort of a reflection of where I'm trying to take this, and they've all been songwriters. They all.
Okay, so you had Hal Gelb on the cover.
Hal Gelb was our our last issue, which was actually the spring 2002. The one before that was a songwriter. His name's Jay Farrar, who was in a band called Sunvolt, and Uncle Tupelo before that. And the first issue, we had a guy named Alejandro Escovedo, who's just this great songwriter, been around for 20 years, and played in a punk band in the late 70s. In fact, I think they played their last set was the Sex Pistols' last set in San Francisco, yeah, a band called The Nuns. Okay. And then he went on to be in the True Believers, and really part of that Austin songwriting
Right.
scene.
And Hal Gelb's sort of the second coming of Neil Young.
Kind of.
Kind of.
Yeah, you know, he's this sort of eccentric guy who I can't pigeonhole his music. It's really all over the map, but an important songwriter, I thought.
But I mean, songwriters don't sell at the newsstands, right? I mean, the Sex Pistols sold in their day at the newsstands,
right?
But now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not going to reach that kind of audience. I'll never reach that kind of audience. But this is a niche magazine, and you know, there's a real niche people of readership out there for it.
Yeah. I mean, again, to beat the Rolling Stone comparison to death here, Rolling Stone tried to be not all things to all people, but certainly there was politics,
right.
There was music, and there was life in the fast lane and in the weird lanes too.
Right.
And you've done a little of that with your magazine. I mean, you're I think a little more highbrow than Rolling Stone started out, but very cultured, but across the board. I
right.
mean, you're not a genre magazine.
No. We really try not to be. We're just trying to be a sort of literate rock and roll magazine, and I just feel like that just isn't really happening right now. So,
in the photography, again, you don't have any Leibowitz yet.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Yeah, you're working on
it.
it. Okay, yeah. But the photography is impressive.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, I try and get the best people, and luckily I've been able to work with people, people like Paul Natkin and Dennis Kleiman and photographers like that who have worked with Rolling Stone and Spin and some of the other big name magazines that are really looking for an outlet to shoot the people or the artists, the bands that they're interested in, and don't really care about big budgets, because I certainly don't have that. So it works out pretty well for me.
In fact, I mean, you are the heart and soul of the magazine. Also, which is to say, you're the publisher and the art director,
right.
and a few other things. The
many
intern,
hats.
as we say.
Yeah.
How does that work?
It's a time-consuming gig, and it's one that doesn't pay very well. So you gotta love this stuff. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it.
And the writers that you attract, who are, again, high quality, could try to make a living off their writing. Can you pay them, or do they do it because they love the magazine?
Well, I pay them. They don't pay them much, but luckily, once again, if you find people out there that maybe don't have the kind of outlets that they want, they're willing to work for a little less because they want to talk about and write about this, the artists that they're not really given the opportunities to do in any, with any real detail in some of the bigger magazines.
So what do you tell a writer, or for that matter, if you were talking to somebody who's never read it before, why write for it, why read it? Tell me why.
Oh, that's a good one. Well, I think we dig a little deeper than your average magazine, average music magazine. At least we try. We try and find out, we try and get into the process of songwriting. We try and find out motivations, inspirations, things like that. And then sort of also on the musician side of things, I like to find out, hey, what kind of guitars do you play? Why do you play it this way? And how do you get that, how do you do that thing when you're doing that? And we try and get into that as well. So I think there's a little bit for everything, a little bit for everybody in that, the musicians will dig it, right. And the fans will like it.
The fans will like it.
Right.
Well, Rolling Stone hit it big early on. It got put on the map. John Lennon granted an interview, and then there were a lot of events in music which catapulted Rolling Stone to a national profile.
Right.
Are you looking for the same thing, or hoping for the same thing?
Well, sure. I mean, I think there are always going to be things, major events, and hopefully we'll be there to somehow cover them in a, memorable way.
In a memorable way,
yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And short of that, how will you succeed?
I think by just continuing to do a quality magazine, trying to do a quality magazine, quality writing, quality photography, giving people what they're not getting at the newsstands.
Are people buying it? I mean, you're getting subscribers?
Yeah, things are going really well. People seem to, people call and write literally every day thanking me for doing, for giving them a magazine, like this. So
you have now a brand new issue out. I think we have it here.
Right.
Grab it up there.
Sure.
Who's on the cover here?
Her name's Beth Orden. She's a songwriter from England. Good stuff. She's got Emmylou Harris, Ryan Adams playing on the new record, and just really good record.
I saw Emmylou when her hair was still black.
Oh, yeah. That's a while ago.
Yeah, that was a while ago,
yeah.
right. So,
yeah, it's hitting the newsstands this week. We've got Beth Orden, Wilco, big piece on Wilco, article on another songwriter named John Spencer, is just real rootsy blues kind of guy, and we have a sidebar with Ike Turner in there. It's just a really fun issue. We got a story on the Flatlanders, who just put out their first record in 30 years.
That's
yeah. Jeffrey Himes did that. So, just a really good issue. I'm really excited about it.
And do you get some political stories too, or?
Not yet.
Not
I mean,
yet.
not actually. Well, there is a piece on there with Patti Smith, and
another name, a blast from the
that's
past.
right. And she talked about just the sort of situation right now, in Afghanistan, and talks about some inspirations that she had for some of her current songs that are sort of based on what's going on right now with our foreign policy. So that's a good piece.
Right, and I assume they're skeptical of the
Yes,
foreign policy.
exactly.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah. It's a good piece.
It's Tacoma Park after
That's
all.
right.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. So your plans are big and broad.
World domination. Yeah.
World domination.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
I'm in favor of that.
No, I just hope we find a place on the newsstand, and I hope people pick us up and try and, I'm trying to give people, a quality rock magazine, and hopefully they'll be into it as much as I am.
I hope so too.
Well,
from one generation to the next. Thank you, Scott. Thanks for joining us in the Coffee House. The name Scott Crawford in the magazine Harp may someday be as famous as Jan Wenner and Rolling Stone. But either way, they are already linked in a wonderful tradition of music and writing that is different, purposeful, and at the top of the game. I'm Howard Cohen, and this has been A Second Look.
What's it like to be called out of your name your whole adult life? Have people think Speedy Gonzales, sombreros and siestas, christen you Mex? What do they know of Cape Verde or Canja? They think your name carries the mark of Zorro. They never question why you can translate in Brazil. They don't know the difference between S and Z is more than the difference between A sharp and B flat. That just like there's more than one fingering for B flat, there can be more than one tongue in a black man's mouth. They don't know Mornas are the blues and Criollo, that we weave panu for kente, sing cola boy for work songs, crumble couscous for cornbread, pick cranberries instead of cotton. All they know is you carved up mutton leg with Basie and could quote note for note from Webster's Dictionary of Solos. But tonight, at the Newport Jazz Festival, you step out from Big Ben's shadow, rise for your solo with a coladera in the curve of your horn, transforming into sweet daddy grace. You preach hard enough to be heard all the way home in Pawtucket. They say Jesus could walk on water, but only Paul Gonsalves could walk on sour mash. Now your head bobs like the schooner Ernestina in rough seas. For 6 whole minutes, choruses cloud the horizon as a hurricane boils from your saxophone's bell. After your thunderous sermon, silver applause showers. You look into the darkness, hear all the bravas saying, obrigado. They know a sax ain't nothing but a trapiche. Emotions nothing but raw cane. No, you pressed your lips on the reed, squeezing out fluid riffs to distill the rum of our sweet inebriation in the brass tuning of your tenor. Duke knew how to spell your name, knew the difference between S and Z. That's why he picked a passion flower for you. Why, 9 days after you broke down your horn for the last time, Ellington closed the cover of his piano forever.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'd like to welcome you, Antonio Parker and Sounds of the City.
Thank you.
Question for you.
Okay.
I know this gets asked to you a lot. You're playing sax. Your last name's Parker.
Yeah, that happens to be a coincidence.
Okay, good. All right. But
yeah, but I started playing saxophone before I found out that Charlie Parker played alto too.
So you started like renting one from some music store down the street or something?
Something like that.
That's great.
Yeah.
You are a Washington, D.C. native?
No, I'm actually from Philadelphia.
Yeah.
But I came to D.C. by way of Howard University.
Okay.
And so I've been up here for about 10, 12 years.
Yeah, it's getting almost native.
Like my second home,
there.
yeah.
Now, the new CD is called The Exchange.
That's right.
Tell me about the title of that, how you came up with The Exchange.
Well, in 1996, I had a tour in Africa with pianist Vince Evans, through USIA, United States Information Agency, and we went to 7 countries in Africa. And that experience actually was the impetus for the music on the CD. And so we exposed some of the different sounds, you know.
So Sounds of the City could be any city.
That's right.
It could be Kinshasa, it could be Newark, New Jersey.
That's right. So that's the idea.
All right. What was the name of the tune that you started off with?
That was The Journey of Songhai.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about giving us one more? What's that one going to be?
This is going to be the title track, The Exchange.
All right. Very good. Take it away.
All right.
Hello and welcome to Rewind at the Coffee House, where we're exploring media that make a difference. Today I'm talking with a filmmaker who has spent his professional life exploring the links between the environment and spirituality. Toby McLeod, thank you for joining us today. Toby, tell us about your film In the Light of Reverence.
Well, it was a 10-year project focusing on Native American sacred places. And we told 3 stories. One was the Lakota at Devil's Tower in Wyoming, which they refer to as Bear's Lodge, and which climbers love to climb. In the Hopi area, they have a very complex cultural and spiritual relationship to a very large area. A lot of mining is going on there. That's the second story. And then in the third story, we look at Mount Shasta in California and the Wintu people who take care of Mount Shasta spiritually, and when a ski resort was proposed there, they fought against it. And in publicizing some of their sacred places on the mountain, they sort of brought out a lot of New Age folks in California who then started going to their sacred spring and drumming and chanting and running around naked, and so that became the problem. They beat the ski resort back, but then now they have a whole New Age congregation gathering at their sacred spring. So the idea was, most non-Indians really don't understand why these places are so important to Native Americans. There's not very much understanding of Native history in this country. So the idea was, let's do some basic public education and try to explain why these places are so important.
Let's take a look at a clip from In the Light of Reverence.
This is my church. I don't go down to you white people's church and go in there and raise hell.
They have the right to come up here and worship. They have the right to do anything anybody else does on the public lands. But so do we have the right to mine.
The irony of the situation is that you can go on public land to ski, you can go on public lands to strip a mountain and leave a cyanide pool, but you cannot go on public lands to pray for the earth and its continued fertility.
A long time ago, the Sun and Spider Woman created the earth. With her saliva, Spider Woman molded clay, breathed spirit into it, and gave birth to the people. Then she taught them how to care for land and life.
For most Americans, the Holy Land exists on another continent. But for Native Americans, the Holy Land is here.
You said it took 10 years to make this film. Why did it take so long?
Well, I'm obviously a white guy, so I'm an outsider coming into communities who've had very bad experiences with archaeologists and museums and filmmakers and photographers and journalists. And people come saying they want to help, and they often end up doing a lot of harm. So when we started, we made commitments to the people we were working with. First, we created a Native American advisory board. And then as we went into these communities, I mean, I had relationships with the Hopi that went back 20 years and with the Wintu that go back 10 years. With the Lakota, I really didn't have much of a relationship, but the climbing controversy came up as we were shooting, so we decided to add a third story. But the development of trust with each of those communities and promising that it would be a two-way consultation process from beginning to end, that when we would go and listen, for starters, we wouldn't have cameras, we would just talk and find out what was important to them. Then when we shot, we would give copies of the interviews to the families. When we had a rough cut, we'd go back and show it. When we had a fine cut, we'd go back and show it. And then when it was finished, we'd go back and show it. So between that and fundraising, which of course took about 40% of our time over 10 years, because we'd raise $10,000 and then spend it and be out of money and then keep going. It just took 10 years to make, from beginning to end.
You eventually got money from ITVS, from the independent television service, for this film. How did that affect it?
After 7 or 8 years and 100 hours of footage in the can, We went to ITVS and Native American Public Telecommunications, and we had edited enough of a clip to give a sense of the importance of the story. We had to apply 3 times in terms of how long it takes to raise money. So in the end, yes, we got $200,000 from ITVS and NAPT, which enabled us to then have a 4-person co-producer, myself, co-producer is Melinda Maynor, who's Native American. My wife is the writer, Jessica Abbey, Will Parinello, our editor. Literally, the 4 of us kind of locked ourselves in a room for a year and struggled with this footage and each other. And but with that money, we were able to do that and get a composer to do new music, and we were able to really craft a film that would have power and impact in its effect on people, because we did have an amount of money to finish it that was what we really needed. And it's a luxury that many filmmakers never get. And I never really had it, and it really showed me what a difference it makes to be funded as a filmmaker and to be able to just do your work, because it really helped.
You spoke about impact and having this film make a difference. And I know you've been showing it while you were in Washington at the Pentagon and at the Department of the Interior. Tell me how that went and what difference it made.
You know, originally the whole country was Native American land, and as they were relocated and put on reservations and so forth, and the federal government took over most of that land. I mean, there's plenty of private property conflicts around sacred sites, but most of them are on federal land. And so the Department of Defense has huge tracts of land, as does the Forest Service, the BLM, Army Corps of Engineers. All the federal agencies are in conflict with Native people over sacred sites. And 2 of the stories we tell in the film ended up with pretty good results because someone in the federal government, either the National Park Service or the Forest Service, listened, as we did as filmmakers. In both cases, they were women. And they brought the Native people to the table and said, we want to hear why you don't like climbing on Devil's Tower, why you don't want a ski resort on Mount Shasta, and they listened. And both cases, there was a decision not to build a ski resort. The permit was denied, and climbers were asked to stop climbing. So it's a kind of a new historic opportunity right now. There's people working their way up through the federal government, many of them women, as I was saying, who really want a dialogue. They really want to change the definition of consultation. And so that's an opening. I mean, the fact that we were able to go show the film at the Pentagon, there's a Native American woman who's working there, and there's a lot of interaction throughout different DoD facilities with Native people, and she felt that it would be worth trying to educate people in all different parts of the defense establishment as to the real meaning of these places. And same with the Department of Interior. I mean, that's the agency that really deals with Native Americans. And there we did a screening. We had Vine Deloria, who's the Lakota scholar who wrote Custer Died for Your Sins, and he's been at, he's like the intellectual elder on this issue. And he came to Department of Interior and gave a keynote speech, and we had a panel that was all Native Americans except one Department of Interior official. And he got beat up pretty good, actually. But he knows why he got beat up, and they promised to do better. They actually activated a working group on sacred site protection that had been allowed to just dissolve and sort of fizzle out. And so they're going to reactivate that. And so it's, I mean, and the film has been out for a year. We've already had a broadcast, and it's taken a year and a half to get to this point where we could actually kind of spend the time to build this whole week in Washington, D.C. and show it at different agencies and bring in a lot of Native people to be with the film.
So the broadcast is really only the beginning of the film's life, and
Yeah.
you see this as an ongoing activity.
That's for me. That's an unusual sequence, and it comes about because we got the ITVS funding, and with the ITVS funding, we had a kind of a doorway to POV, and the minute we finished the film, POV accepted it. For
POV is the
PBS documentary series stands for Point of View. And so they accepted the film for summer of 2001 broadcast. So we had about 6 months leading up to the broadcast where we showed the film in Native American communities, and we premiered it, and we were in some film festivals. But then everything went into broadcast publicity. And then 4 million people, 3 million people saw the film on PBS, And then we had a successful film that a lot of people hadn't seen, and now, you know, almost 6 months later, I'm still full-time distributing the film.
So if people want to buy the film, where do they
We have a website. It's www.sacredland.org, and Bullfrog Films is our distributor, and they are at bullfrogfilms.com.
Now, what's the current status of the issues that you raised in your film? What are the current controversies?
Well, the new administration's push for energy development is affecting every state, every tribe. The whole western United States is suddenly confronted with a new push to develop oil and coal and gas and uranium. And so quite a few sacred land struggles that have been sort of simmering for a while have reignited, and some, there's a place in California where a decision had been made to not allow a gold mine to go in because it was going to just completely trash. It's a cyanide heap leach gold mine. It was just going to totally destroy a whole area of trails and dreaming sites and vision questing sites. And the new Department of Interior, Gail Norton, has just reversed that decision. The first decision under Clinton was, this is not an appropriate use of this land, and they just decided, well, you misinterpreted the statute. It is an appropriate use of that land. And so there are places that are confronted with the same kind of reversal, and also just the push for oil in Alaska and Wyoming, and coal near the Zuni. They have a sacred salt lake. They want to put a strip mine there. The Hopi, who are in our film, Peabody Coal Company, after the film was on, released their own videotape. They issued their own scientific studies saying we're not harming your underground water supply, but now they've applied for a permit to expand their coal strip mine and increase their pumping of underground water by 32% because they put it in a pipeline and take it to a power plant 300 miles away. So now they're saying, you know, publicly to Time Magazine, to the Hopi, they're saying, we're going to get off this aquifer, we're going to stop pumping, but then they file a permit saying we want to take more water. So
sadly, your film is going to be timely for some time to come.
Unfortunately, yeah. But that's, I mean, that's what a filmmaker wants, is a film that's relevant. So.
Thank you, Toby, for talking with us about your film, In the Light of Reverence. And I hope you'll be able to find this film on television or in your library. Good luck and good viewing.
As if to remind us of everything we'd lost, the summer returned for 3 sweet days in fall. Too restless to keep myself indoors, I wandered the neighborhood, saw the outdoor tables full of couples in love. Already the old story had begun again, trees showing the sky how many colors they'd kept hidden beneath their green, then shaking them off like memories or bad ideas. Outside the Safeway, the skateboard boys took on the banisters, half flights of steps to the street. One, hair bleached near white, had a bracelet of thorns tattooed around his arm. Each time he landed, his body rippled from feet to neck and was the more beautiful, being subject to the laws of ordinary matter. Further down the block, I passed the store you managed the year we married. Only then did I remember it was your birthday. I came home and opened a bottle, raised a glass to you and one to your new love. Then I made dinner, small purple eggplants, tomatoes swirled in golden oil, garlic and parsley, glass emptied and refilled. I know we are happier now without each other, but remember what it felt like when we weren't. The two sometimes are hard to keep in balance. I think of that boy pushing off of the ground, the concentrated grace that filled his eyes. I think of the space between his feet and board at the apex of his flight, charged with magic, all the more precious because it can't last. Thank you.